marketing manager for the wholesale retail spirit side of the business, Pernod Ricard themselves entered into an arrangement with the UNC government under Bastille Pandey to take over the acreages that was currently limited where Blue Waters is now. I tell you all of this so that you understand that on this particular issue, I have a lot of information. So when kick out the PNM and Alan Karim and the rest of the noisemakers talk, I want you to understand. I have a lot of information on this. Pernod Ricard is the conjunction of two big brands in France, Pernod and Ricard, licorice flavored anise-based drinks. They're very popular in France and the French dependencies. And they took that land to grow anise, to make Pernod. Okay? This is as much information as I am giving on this issue because I'm meeting with the principals, the former principals of the company tomorrow, just to clarify certain issues, because talking heads trying to make something else into the conversation. All I know is that some company associated with Blue Waters or Dominic Hadid entered into an arrangement with Pernod Ricard and ended up in control of those lands. How they went from being agricultural lands is the big question. Because under the UNC, under Bastille Pandey, it was leased to Pernod Ricard for agricultural purposes to grow anise. How Blue Waters come to be in possession of agricultural lands to operate such massive industry and to tap into agricultural aquifers to bottle as Blue Waters water are questions now that have to be asked. Who gave them the change of use, if change of use exists, or if Blue Waters and Dominic Hadid are in violation of the lease? Now, I doubt that they will be in violation of the lease, but like a certain government minister who changed agricultural land in Tobago so that he could build a housing development. You see, agricultural land real cheap. Agricultural land is sell for cents an acre, and then you convert it to industrial or commercial or even residential, and then the value of it goes up without you doing anything. It goes up exponentially. And there's a reason for that, because agricultural land is set aside and protected to grow food. All of that said, Blue Waters is on Caroni land. That Caroni land, as far as I know the transaction up to Bastille Pandey making it available to Pernod Ricard for the growing of anise. How that changed from an agricultural project to what is going on that land now should be the subject of many questions. First thing I am going to do, after I talk to those former principals, if I don't get the information, is to lodge a freedom of information request to find out if the lands that Blue Waters are currently occupying, if it was converted from agriculture to the factory environment that is there now. Stick a pin in that. The second set of questions I want to ask tonight is this. The UNC under Kamla Prasad Bisesa, you see, I told them that they were going to make a mistake with the vote of no confidence against Chotyoung. So said, so done. I also told them that they are going to be ridiculed and make a mockery of themselves if they try to hold a round table, which is a PNM device. But I say it's a PNM device. PNM has used it. PNM called what it did a round table on Section 34. But even so, you can't get all of the people on your round table around the table because of COVID-19. So you cannot have a round table. The most you could have is a panel discussion. So call it a panel discussion. Call it a non-partisan commission. Call it anything else. But stop operating like you don't have a clue. That aside, I mean, from a communication point of view, you don't pass yourself off as your enemy or your competitor. The UNC is passing itself off with PNM strategy, that vote of no confidence nonsense, that round table. But let's say it's a round table, no problem. The round table starts tonight. And on the round table is Kamla Prasad Bisesa, Wade Mark, Karen Yunus Tishera, Gary Aboud, Ralph Maraj, Timothy Hamilton. This is the problem that I have with that. Because Kamla Prasad Bisesa and Wade Mark are in the House. One is in the Senate and one is in the House of Representatives. So the entire debate, there is nothing new for Kamla to add. No, it's law. Yes, whether or not the president has proclaimed it, what you send to the president to proclaim as prime minister will be proclaimed. Kamla knows that because Kamla had section 34 proclaimed in the dead of night on a long weekend. And I'll never let her forget that. That while the rest of the country were hoodwinked to be oohing and eyeing fireworks, she and her team were in President's house proclaiming section 34 in the dead of night before holiday. And that has never been answered for as to why that was done. The point of this is that once it is passed in the House and the Senate and it goes to the president, at some point it's going to be proclaimed into law. So you call that fait accompli. Assume that it is a law. There are things that Kamla Prasad Bisesa could have done because Timothy Hamilton, and I'm saying this again, is by far and away the most knowledgeable person on procurement and on this procurement legislation in this country. Timothy Hamilton was the person that guided everybody's opinion, including members of the Senate and the business community. Everybody was turning to Timothy Hamilton to ask. So there's nothing new for Timothy Hamilton to add to the conversation. There's nothing new under the sun about this issue. I'm telling you, I'm coming to a point. Ralph Maraj, what is the purpose? Wait, I want to ask. What is Wade Mark going to say that he didn't already say in the Senate? What could he add? That the PNM gutted the act and made it legal and legitimate for government to engage in procurement corruption? We've said that. So we don't need a round table to say that again. What is Kamla going to say different that she didn't say in the House, in her presentation, in committee stage, in every part of the passage of this procurement bill into law? What? Nothing. There's nothing new for her to add other than they gutted the bill, they amended it to make it legitimate for government to engage in procurement corruption. So there's nothing new for Kamla and Wade Mark to add. There is nothing new for Timothy Hamilton to add. He explained why that was wrong to everybody, including myself. So we all knew and we're all thankful to Timothy Hamilton. But bringing Timothy Hamilton back on a round table to talk about the things that we talked about that couldn't prevent it from being passed into law in the first place is using him and wasting public time. So let's look at the rest of the people on that panel. Karen Yunus Tishera. What does Karen Yunus Tishera bring to that conversation other than she was a former PNM? Ooh, it's looking bipartisan. They're going at lengths to call it independent speakers, but it's not so. But we'll stick a pin. I am asking, it is the UNC, Anil Roberts, named Karen Yunus Tishera tax sharer. It is Anil Roberts and the rest of the UNC that told this country that what Karen Yunus Tishera did as Minister of Finance when she found out that Clico and CL Financial were going under, she pulled her money out with insider information, an unpardonable sin. If were provable, she would have gone to jail for a long, long time anywhere else in the civilized world. So why is it okay for people say, Philip, you was going to work with the UNC and you willing to work with that one? Of course. I am not saying you can't work with people you disagree with. There's a difference with working with people you disagree with and working with people you accuse of criminal conduct. I will not work with anybody that I think is criminal, and I'm very public with that. So miss me with the bullshit. Stop trying to approximate and make everything the same thing. If the UNC believe, that's why I never, ever forgave Rowley for calling Gary Griffith a conspirator to commit murder. He never took that back. And I said publicly, and it caused me and Gary to fall out. Gary got very angry with me, but I had to deal with it. I told Gary, I said, no matter what you say, Keith Rowley in Emailgate called you a conspirator to commit murder. And he never undid it. Now he made somebody that he accused of being a conspirator to commit murder, he make him the commissioner of police. This is why these politicians are full of shit. And the rest of you who playing smart with foolishness, who don't want to call a thing for the thing that it is, you're wasting your time and you're spoiling the world for your children. You're spoiling Trinidad for your children and your grandchildren because they will eat the bread that these devils need in. But what will Karen Nunes Teixeira add to the conversation that Timothy Hammersmith can't add? Will she talk about PNM corruption and how corrupt the PNM is? That's the only thing that makes her a draw. And they're hoping that she busts a mark. But I'm wondering, will either she or Kamala come to an accommodation where Kamala apologizes on behalf of the UNC for accusing her of committing a crime? I will find out after. I'm not watching that circus, but I'll see if it comes into the newsfeed. Then there is Gary Aboud. Gary Aboud is a funny one. What is Gary Aboud's role on that procurement panel? What's he going to say? That members of our community, members of the Syrian community, have moved in quick time from haberdashers, importers, and retailers to being the largest per capita beneficiary of government contract and largest? Will he say that? Is that why Gary Aboud is there? Because if Gary Aboud doesn't say that members of our community, our Syrian community, are the largest per capita beneficiaries of government largest and moved out of their core area of expertise, haberdashery and sellers of cloth, to becoming massive contractors, house builders, highway builders. They provide ambulance service, justice on time service. They're the largest provider of security. And all of these contracts will Gary talk about that? Because procurement comes up here. And Ralph Maraj. Ralph Maraj has been in the PNM and the UNC. And when he was in the PNM, he spoke about UNC corruption. And when he was in the UNC, he spoke about PNM corruption. If you remember, Ralph Maraj shot to fame when his sister, Speaker of the House, Oka Sipol, was put under house arrest by Patrick Manning. And Ralph Maraj got some fame from that and crossed the floor and went to join the UNC because of that. And then left the UNC. After that, did he go back to the PNM? I can't remember. But I want to ask, will Ralph Maraj be allowed to say to Kamala and Wade Mark that the PNM and the UNC corrupt? Will this procurement roundtable talk true fact like an independent senator said last week, that this country is corrupt politically, that we are a corrupt nation? Will Ralph Maraj, former member of parliament for both PNM and UNC, be allowed to admit that the United National Congress is corrupt? Will Kamala allow him to say that? Because if she does not, And if none of these things make the grade, then all this is a stunt for the UNC to pretend that they are on the moral high ground here with this procurement legislation, when there are so many things that the UNC is guilty of that has never been properly ventilated, understood, investigated, and those involved prosecuted. And we, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, all of us, especially people like me, who have the ability to think and to speak, our job is not to look for a side to link up with, to get a position for ourselves, to pretend that we in politics. Politics is about the people's business. And I am doing the people's business every single time I stand up and speak out. I want to know, Ralph Maraj, Timothy Hammersmith, Karen Nunes Teixeira, and Gary Aboud, are you going to be honest while you are on this panel, or are you going to sacrifice your personal integrity, any ethics you may have, for a stunt? We will see what comes out of this latest game of hoodwink the public. Trinidad needs leadership. Trinidad needs representation. I'm closing with this last thing. My family, we buy 5 to 10 cases of water a week. And we buy Blue Water's water. And I am going to videotape myself. I will do a live video the next time I go to buy water, because I am supporting Wayne Sturgis' call that because of the 39 exemptions that Blue Water got, while thousands of our people are stuck outside begging to come home, that I will boycott. Me personally will buy nothing that Blue Waters or any waters is involved in, until all of the rest of the citizens of this country come home, are allowed. The insanity of me say are allowed to come home, as if this 2x4 government, this band of incompetent, corrupt shit snakes, should have the authority to stop citizens from coming home. But because we have such a remarkably weak opposition, of course we would have the close now. I apologize for the sticking and the delays. But because we have such a remarkably weak opposition, The government is running rampant. I want to hear Kamla Prasad Bisesa say boycott Blue Waters. I want to hear